Shobha there too?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm constantly shifting positions.
Okay, shall we begin? I'll go live.
Yes. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third live deliberation hosted by Creators and Cultural Business Program at IIM Ahmedabad. It's better known simply as CCBP. My name is Anchal Jain. I have served as a faculty co-chair at CCBP since its inception 7 years ago. I also serve as founding partner at Valmore Action Advisory. With me is Amit Karna, who's also the faculty co-chair with me at CCBP. Amit is the professor of strategy at IIM Ahmedabad, also serving as a chairperson of placements committee at the institute. Amit will be moderating the session today. Also on the CCBP team are Gitanjali Rastogi, the backbone of the program really since its conception stage with me, helping us shape and nurture its content as well as the participant intake. Annika Narayanan, our newest member, looks after the outreach and communication of the program. The subject for today's deliberation is exploring the future of travel and hospitality. Now, these two intertwined sectors are most severely rocked by the pandemic and will probably take the longest to recover fully. It doesn't stop here. Many lifestyle sectors also depend on travel, adding to the economic woes that many industries face today. For example, cafes, restaurants, shopping. A large part of shopping actually happens when people travel for clothing, bags, shoes, etc. It's endless. Museums, performing art, the list goes on the number of sectors that depend on travel. As a result, so much as we individuals want to travel, the economy in general, particularly the lifestyle, the creative and cultural industries, need people to start traveling. Discussing this today is an August panel that I'm now delighted to introduce. Let me begin with Divya Thani. Divya is the editor-in-chief at Condé Nast Traveler, a publication that she launched in India back in 2010. As we well know, Condé Nast Traveler is India's leading resource for the well-heeled audience. Divya graduated summa cum laude from University of Pittsburgh and has been with the media industry ever since. Welcome to CCBP, Divya.
Thank you so much for having me.
Moving on to the next panelist, Hari Nair. Hari is an entrepreneur, a management consultant, and a travel talk show host. He founded and recently sold his business Holiday IQ to lastminute.com. Holiday IQ, as you might know, is a travel community of over 8 million members in India. And Hari's specialty is listening to the consumers and, of course, transforming them into products and curation. Before that, he was a partner at KPMG, working on several market infrastructure projects, including the Worli Bandra Sea Link, the new airports, Delhi and Bombay. Thank you, Hari, for joining us. Shilpa, an old friend of CCBP, is a veteran in textiles, travel, and restaurant businesses. often using her varied experiences to curate unique travel options that brings to the consumer, that she brings to the consumers through her venture, Breakaway. Shilpa is also the co-founder at Mustard Restaurants in Goa and Mumbai. She had earlier spent over a decade with Fab India before co-founding Jaipur.com. She's also the partner at Valmore Action Advisory currently. Shilpa is our third panelist. Hi, Shilpa.
Delighted to be here. Thank you.
Also on the panel is Shobha Mohan, who describes herself as a stubborn and independent spirit, leading her to becoming an entrepreneur around the unique and extraordinary travel. And as you might know, she founded Nair to represent and market very special owner-run properties like boutique palace hotels, conservation lodges, spa and wellness retreats, and nature-bound hideaways. Happy to have you with us today, Shobha.
Thank you.
And with this, I would like to hand over the session to Amit. Amit.
Thank you very much, Anshul. And a very warm welcome to all the attendees of this live deliberation. I hope all of you are well, wherever you are. We are delighted to have this fantastic panel here today. And as all of you would know, travel and hospitality is one of the sectors that has been always defined as one of the sectors which is hardest hit. In fact, many of the reports are expecting the downturn for this sector in particular to continue for maybe a couple of years. There has been speculation that it might take longer. So what we thought is, why not just get together this August panel here and pick their brains on what people in this industry can expect. And therefore, I'm going to start first with requesting each of the panelists to share some of their thoughts and introductory remarks on what they feel is the shift that the last 3 months, 4 months has impacted the travel and hospitality industry in India. So we'll go through each one of the panelists and hear their opening thoughts around what the big trend has been. And to the audience, I would request, if you have any questions for the panelists, please use the Q&A option in the Zoom webinar window that you can see here. If you have thoughts that you would like to share with other attendees, please use the chat option for that. We will take audience questions towards the end of the webinar and looking forward to an engaging deliberations here with the panel. So with this, may I request Divya to share what her thoughts are on how is this entire travel experience impacted given the COVID-19 and the connected lockdowns.
Thanks, Amit. Thanks, Anshul. Thanks, everyone, for having me. Yes, I think from both of your opening remarks, we can all agree that travel has been affected, like you said, probably the first and the most drastically, and will certainly take a while to recover to even get back to where we used to be 6 months ago. Certainly, I think that there's reasons that we're all talking about recovery that's going to take quite a while. The world is probably more globalized now than it ever has been. And therefore, any one country still at risk puts everyone else in lots of other countries at risk as well. And that's partly why the recovery is going to take as long as everybody imagines. Fewer flights, less connectivity means higher costs, means falling demand. So there's a lot that is going to continue as a bit of a, unfortunately, vicious cycle. That said, I do want to say that I believe there are many, many new opportunities that will come up as a result of this. Within the travel industry, it will, of course, look extremely different, probably very, very different from what we're used to. But to everyone watching here, if you have businesses that are in the travel space or that are somehow connected to the travel space, which most creative businesses, I would say, are, I think there's still a lot of hope. And I think that there's a lot that you can do right now. And there's an incredible amount of opportunity at this particular time because we all have to change the way that we're thinking. And the ones that are able to think creatively and imaginatively and innovatively right now are going to be the ones to reap those advantages. So I will just say a few things that I think are worth thinking about that hopefully are positive. One is that despite this very uncertain climate and very uncertain environment, people still are dying to travel. Everybody that has been under lockdown now for so many months, including all of us on this panel, I'm sure, and all of you watching, can't wait to get out of the house, can't wait to get out and just go on a drive, even if it's a staycation, if it's somewhere close by. We're all itching to get out. Travel has become too integral to our lifestyles for us to simply say, oh, well, that's it. We can't go anywhere anymore and we're going to be completely content staying home. So I think that there certainly is a need for travel. I edit Condé Nast Traveler, and we did a survey in May of this year. We had 3,500 respondents in a couple of days that completed this survey, which I think is also very indicative of how much people were sort of still very interested in traveling. And I should also mention at this point that our audience has doubled during the lockdown at a period when nobody has been able to travel, which I think is another good sign. But one of the key things that came out of this survey is that people can't wait to go. They're still hoping to travel in 2021. And I know that all of the projections and what the analysts are saying is that Q4 may not actually be when recovery takes place, but I think that it will most certainly start. And as soon as we're able to do that and get people to start moving, things will of course look better. It will obviously start much smaller, and I think that's something that we're already seeing in other parts of the world that are ahead in terms of their recovery. The key, obviously, to all of this will be domestic travel and very, very localized travel and experiences. And so with that, it brings a whole new bunch of opportunities. What people are looking for is going to be extremely different. Nature, wellness, sustainability, all of these are going to be key trends going forward. But I think for now, I'll just leave you with that and let others speak as well, and we can come back to some of this later on. I just want to say that I think while the recovery is going to take a long period, there still are very many opportunities that we should be looking for during this time.
Thank you, Divya, for this, starting off with this silver lining on the clouds that surround us here today. May I then request, I'll come back to some of those very valid ideas that we have pointed out and the opportunities that we have highlighted. I'll come back to that in a few minutes. Can I then move over to Hari for sharing his thoughts on what he sees as the extent of the impact?
Thanks, Amit. Yeah, I think the silver lining is very much there, and I'm not going to specifically focus on that. I want to just shift the focus slightly. COVID is in front of us. We know that that's a problem. We're aware that it has direct impact on travel. But I want to actually focus on something which is associated, but slightly, a few thousand feet higher than just immediate impact of COVID. And I'll tell you why I say that, because I think in many ways, there were a lot of undercurrents or underlying trends that were happening, which in my view, COVID is actually accelerating. So in a sense, not directly impacted only because of COVID, but because there were underlying trends in any case. And I want to pick on three big changes in my view in consumer behavior that were anyway likely to happen, but will now happen much faster because of this COVID, and more importantly, the lockdown that followed COVID. So first is the fact that airline economics are set for a fundamental restructure for a very long time, in my view. And I'll tell you why I'm saying that. 75% of all profits that any airline makes comes from 25% of its travelers, which is basically business travelers. As remote business becomes a reality, right? People are doing remote meetings, a lot more of conversations, business meetings, stuff is happening remote. There is going to be a situation where business travel is going to significantly fall. And every company on earth has already said that business travel, they're going to cut down significantly. And it is not something that they said because of COVID. It was a trend that I can see in the decade that I've been in work, that, there was always in travel, I've always seen that people are interested in reducing business travel. So it's a trend that we see. Implication of that is that airlines are going to have difficulties with maintaining the current price structures, which essentially means that leisure travelers will not get the kind of prices for travel, long distance airline travel, as they could get. That's one change. The second, which of course a lot of us have been talking about, is the kind of related point of working from home, which is a different point to my mind, different from business travel and this thing, which is, people working from home or people working from remote locations, not in the office. The normal thing that we talk about in that is that it allows people to go to, let's say, leisure destinations and stay for a longer period of time. And I recognize that, and I think that's a big opportunity. But I think there's another opportunity which I see today, and I see it very starkly, for example, in Bangalore today, is that the moment work from home becomes a reasonably realistic proposition, a lot of people are going to leave our metros and go to tier 2 and tier 3 cities, which is their home city, just for the sheer impact that it makes to their quality of life and the economics of their life. The implication of that for the tourism industry is that your customer will no more be largely coming from the metros, but could equally be coming from tier 1 and tier 2 cities. It is again a trend that, in Holiday IQ, we have seen for a long time. In fact, in our top 10 cities in India, we've been tracking a bunch of cities over the last few years, and many of them have actually become significant demand centers for leisure. So I think that's a second one. The third one, which we must be very conscious of, is that outbound travel is likely to become a tremendous competitor. It already is a big competitor to domestic business. But I think in the future, we should not think that because we see all of this and the inability to fly, etc., outbound will give up. It will not, because they're innovating very, very fast. So I don't know how many of you know, but for example, a couple of the Caribbean islands, Barbados, Bermuda, have already announced what they call a remote working visa. It's a 1-year visa that allows you to go and stay, let's say, in a beautiful Caribbean island like the Barbados. At a cost that is cheaper than, I was just looking at it, and it is significantly cheaper than staying in Bangalore, in Delhi, or in Mumbai, on the beaches. All you have to have is the ability to work remote, so that you can demonstrate that you can get income from not working in Barbados or Bermuda, but working somewhere else. And many people in the white collar workforce will be able to do that in the future. So outbound is innovating fast, and we should keep an eye out for that. So 3 big changes: remote work, airline economics, impact of the ability of airlines to ferry passengers, to work from home, and the rise of the demand from tier 2, tier 3 cities, and the potential continued competition from outbound.
Thank you, Hari. That gives a lot more details on how the consumer is going to be behaving, and we'll come back to some of these very interesting thoughts in a few minutes. Let me, with that, go over to Shobha. Sorry.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. So, Shobha, can we hear your opening thoughts on how this industry is going to be impacted, given that people are staying at home, and therefore, what is your view as a service provider? How is it impacted?
Thank you, Ahmed, and I completely agree with Divya and Hari. There is a silver lining. It caught us unawares. I mean, the industry was in shock. The other thing is, it is an industry which the government did not recognize. Did not actually come up with support, with any kind of financial support or for backing for us. However, that said, I think in the last 4-5 months, what we've been seeing is that there is a lot of interest to travel, like Divya said. Also, our markets are expanding. I mean, in the sense, the inbound travelers are actually looking at capitalizing on their networks in India, for instance, to include domestic travel into their ambit of services. The outbound travel quite naturally dug into their market base, their database, and started to look around for more opportunities for them to present to them various options to drive around. Classical road journeys, which is very interesting in India, especially. We've been talking about monsoon travel and things like that. Also, there is so much thought being put into travel. Everything that we've been talking about, that to expand the seasons. I mean, India has been largely promoted as a winter destination. I mean, when can you go to India? October to March. Those kind of things are, are going to speed up by saying, okay, there are other destinations to do. Another thing that I particularly would like to, Hari said, as a market base, of course, the 2-tier cities and the 3-tier cities would probably come into prominence, is also the smaller, not so well-known destinations would probably get a lot of attention, because you're going to move away from, over tourism, like a place like a Chambal Safari Lodge, a standalone, destination hotels are going to become very prominent. Another very important thing, I think, where travel industry is concerned, which will also give rise to a lot of innovation, is that there will be smaller, businesses that can reach out of which are travel. For instance, nobody even bothered about travel insurance. I think these are opportunities for people. When you're thinking travel, we are thinking hotel, airline, and and transport. There are ancillary businesses that can actually can support the travel business. Yes, and like we all agree, there is a lot of opportunity, and we'll come back to a lot more points as we go along.
Sure. Thank you, Shobha. So let me then turn to Shilpa, who's been curating and designing holidays for a niche audience. Shilpa, what is your sense of what's happening around us, and how do you see that impacting the industry?
Thank you, Amit. So I'm here to really represent the voice of a discerning and a more evolved traveler. May not necessarily represent a mainstream travel audience, right? So, when we look at travelers, there is the international inbound traveler, and then into India, and then there is a domestic traveler. Within these, there are different, segments. There is a millennial, there is a Generation Y, there is a baby boomer, and there is a Gen Z traveler. Now, the reason why I'm talking about all these categories and these segments is because each one of them is wired very differently. Let's talk about how the mindset of the domestic traveler is shifting. In this pandemic, as the pace has slowed, I think everybody's perspective on what's important has changed. And after relaxing for days on end and reading all the books that we'd always had, either on our wish list or, gathering dust on our bookshelves, after, some amount of reboot and rewiring, I think people are waking up to the fact that actually the slow way of being is a great way to be. As we speak, we've been in the middle of this situation for the last over 4.5 months, and I think everybody, is full of energy and ideas about how they're going to bring about a shift in the way they're leading their lives, including their aspirations to work differently, to live differently, and even travel differently. So, in our own experience, the international traveler, actually, their motivations and aspirations remain unchanged because they've always been more egalitarian, far more willing to learn from different cultures, experience communities, get under the skin of, the people and their way of life. And in more recent times, even get into conversations around, the larger, systemic gender issues around education, marriage, patriarchy, and so on, and how it impacts the average Indian woman. I mean, this is all from my experience of the international traveler. That said, the domestic traveler, who's, let's focus more on the domestic traveler because it's going to be a while before the international traveler is going to start being comfortable with coming back into India. I mean, the jury's still out on, how long it's going to take. There is enough and more conversation around the fact that, maybe October 21 will be a good time for international travelers to start feeling safe about coming back to India. It's going to happen sooner, or it might take longer, time will tell. So this domestic traveler who's now actually finally beginning to enjoy this way of life, I think in his and her mind, there is a big gap that has been bridged from being only looking for, concepts around staycation, or actually wanting to strike things off a checklist, right? I mean, if I get to, let's say, Sikkim, I have a list of 10 things that I must get done, when I'm there. I think that approach to travel is shifting. I think people are just imbibing the slow way to be, and just finding a way to integrate work and leisure. The truth is that people have found ways to allow for one to blend seamlessly into the other. And here again, I would like to say that this whole business of approach to travel and how we like to travel and how we feel safe about traveling is a function of whether we're traveling solo, or we're traveling with our partners, or we're traveling with family with young kids, or elderly parents, or if we're just going off for a break with our friends. So I think each one of these is their motivations, their priorities are different in terms of how long they're willing to spend on the road when they're driving out. I mean, driving holidays are becoming the norm. Everybody's talking about them. The truth is that there is no perfect time to travel, time to spend on the road. It's a function of how many days are you going to go away for. If you're going away for just 3 days, then you don't want to really spend more than 4 or 5 hours on the road. If you're going away for 7 days, then you don't really mind driving for about 8 or 9 hours. It's a function of where are we going to be able to take pit stops, where are we going to be able to stop to eat, what are the kind of places we're going to stay at, and there'll be more conversations around some of those. But I think that the big shift that I'm beginning to see in the domestic traveler is their willingness to wake up to the possibilities, the world of possibilities around them in their own country, right? I mean, Shobha mentioned the outbound traveler. Harish talked about outbound. We'll actually see a lot more activity with this whole business of, remote working visas. I mean, that's very, very interesting. For all the outbound travelers who are not going to get to travel out in a hurry, I think they're now discovering and rediscovering India. And that, to me, is a huge opportunity. They're waking up to the fact that, the whole business of experiences around food, experiences around discovering the cultural heritage of the country, or, the really, really vast diversity of, craft and textiles. I mean, there is so much that's going on at this point as we speak, also around virtual experiences. They're the likes of Nat Geo and even Airbnb and Viator, of course, internationally, who are all talking about virtual travel, who are all having short experiences. Within India, there's let's say Calcutta Walks, or there's Rubaru in Delhi. There's a whole lot of people in the culinary space, home chefs, who've opened up their homes, their kitchens, their spaces to be able to really create bonds around food, around cooking of regional cuisines, around presentation of food. I mean, all those conversations that each one of us is able to see today on Instagram and Facebook is a validation of the fact that the domestic traveler in India is finally beginning to wake up to India and all that it has to offer. I think we'll get into more as we go along.
Thank you, Shilpa. So from what I am gathering from all of you is that yes, there is a huge impact. It is likely to be longer in this sector as compared to some of the other sectors. As we all also know that it is likely to be more impactful to a lot more sectors than just travel. But at the same time, there is some silver lining, and during this remarks, I hear that there might actually also be some kind of a new segment emerging. So India has been an interesting destination for inbound travelers for a few years now. And what I'm hearing is that given that the outbound travelers are not traveling outside, there will also be a new segment emerging. So let me then go to, as in not segment emerging, but segment that one can be marketing domestic destinations to. So let me then move to Divya, and maybe if we can have your views, Divya, on is this affluent traveler segment, which was earlier outbound and is now going to seek new destinations, new experiences in India, is it going to be similar experiences that they were seeking outside, or will that be more customized? Is there something that your survey tells us? Is there going to be a shift that one can think about seeing it as an opportunity for the Indian service providers?
Yeah, absolutely. We have something like 25 million Indians who travel abroad every year. And if all of them can't do that next year, then that's going to be a huge amount of money that they're, even if they don't want to, even if this pandemic has affected them financially, even if they spend a proportion of that amount on traveling within the country, that's a huge, huge opportunity for all of the providers here. And definitely, I think those that do cater to the outbound, to the inbound market, will shift their priorities and place them on the domestic traveler. This also includes very many of the properties that we have in the country in places like Rajasthan and places like Kerala that traditionally have relied almost entirely on that inbound traveler. So I think that there will certainly be a lot of shifts. I think it's key that we look at the domestic Indian traveler and we recognize a few things about this person. When I was launching Traveler, Condé Nast Traveler 10 years ago, I did a series of one-on-one personal interviews with a couple of hundred people actually that were in this affluent set of travelers and very avid travelers. And the truth is, it's been 10 years now. And in 10 years, I can tell you that their appetite for traveling in India existed 10 years ago, and it continues to exist, and it has only grown in the last 10 years. The affluent Indian traveler who travels internationally consumes content on India more than they do on any other international destination. Every story we ever do on an Indian destination, a new Indian hotel, the opening of somewhere that's different, a new place that you can finally fly into, for example, these stories do absolutely the best by a mile on our website, in our magazine. It's what people remember. So the Indian traveler, the affluent Indian traveler, has always wanted to travel in the country, but has never properly been catered to. A lot of the sort of travel outfits that we have focused on the inbound traveler and not so much on the domestic market. The domestic market usually is looked at in a very sort of mass market sort of way. So it's these package tours, it's very, very low cost. And that's catering to a mass traveler. And that's not the space I think that the most of us are speaking today about. Because really where that opportunity is, that mass traveler, unfortunately, is most certainly going to be affected and will take longer to go back into the travel space. It is the more affluent traveler who is going to be able to spend that disposable income and start moving quicker. So I do believe that the recovery will be led by that affluent traveler. And I think Hari made a great point about the fact that we are going to see a huge drop in business travel. We're going to see a huge drop in MICE. And so we are going to have to look at leisure as one of the key drivers for the recovery. And to be honest, weddings as well. Weddings have always played a huge role in the travel industry, whether they're destination weddings or weddings locally, that bring in so much amount of revenue into our hotels, into our banquet spaces. And we're going to see shifts in all of this. So while there's great opportunity in the sense that, yes, all of these travelers are going to be traveling in India now, we do need to be extremely careful that we're not trying to sell them something that was tailor-made for an international audience. The Indian traveler is not likely to spend a few lakhs to go to Ladakh and stay in a very, very small homestay. Some of them will, I'm not saying that they won't, but that's a very small number. There will be certain things that at that price level, they do expect a certain level of comfort, perhaps. They do expect a certain level of luxury. There are certain things that make Indian travelers unique. We do tend to travel in larger groups, for example. We do tend to travel in groups that are intergenerational. So you have to cater for grandparents and you have to cater for little children. As Shilpa mentioned, food is a huge, huge driving factor for Indians. The food has got to be excellent no matter where it is that they're going in the country. They're really becoming extremely, extremely discerning when it comes to culinary experiences. They want to see the provenance of the food. They want to go to organic farms. They want to go to farm stays. These are shifts that we're seeing, as Hari mentioned as well. I think these are trends that started earlier, but have been extremely exhilarated by this pandemic. So even in the survey that I mentioned earlier that we ran, we did see that people were actually placing a much larger emphasis on going to not cities at all, being out in nature, safaris, wildlife, being out in the wilderness, a focus on wellness. So definitely wellness destinations are going to see a lot more traction now. Another very interesting point that we saw in the survey was that something like, I think 65% of our audience actually was willing to spend more and pay more if a property was following eco-friendly practices and sustainable practices. Now, that to me is a huge, huge shift. That's not something that I would have expected to see from this audience even say 3 years ago. So I think that that's definitely, to me, that says a lot about the direction in which things are going. People are simply going to be a lot more conscious about their carbon footprints. They're going to be a lot more conscious about the impact on the environment. They're going to want to go to places that are pristine, beautiful, clean, and safe. And I think Shobha made that point about safety as well. These are extremely important. Traveling in India, these are factors that we have to keep in mind. So I think that there will be tremendous opportunity, but we can't assume that one size fits all. The product that was developed with an American traveler in mind is simply not going to translate for an Indian traveler. So you have to be watching what this affluent market is looking for. You have to be seeing what their demand is, what kind of experiences they're looking for, and then completely redesign the experience. And there again is where we're going to see a lot of young entrepreneurs coming up, and really sort of anyone who has their pulse on things and really gets the zeitgeist right now is going to see what the next big trend is going to be.
Thank you, Divya. So very interesting insights from that survey. Quite counterintuitive, a few of them. So then let me take this to Shobha from the service provider side. So if this is going to be what Divya is mentioning and Hari also alluded to earlier, are going to be the consumer shifts, how prepared do you think are the properties, or do you see an opportunity there as well, that maybe there will be more demand for responsible tourism? Will there be a customer? And are we ready for it? Are the properties going to be ready for it? What will it require to cater to their shift in these expectations, including from inbound to domestic? Shobha, you're on mute.
So I've always felt that a good hotel is a good hotel. You need to make a good, clean, well-run, very experiential hotel. Something like, I don't want to take names, but a hotel where it creates experience out of everything. So for me, there is no inbound hotel, there is no domestic hotel, there is no. I mean, there are price points, yes, but there is nothing that in that you have a range of experiences. Some of the experiences might be liked by the foreigners, and some will definitely be for the Indians. So that is how I look at it. And I mean, it's just not now when when the blast happened in Bombay thereafter. So every 4 years, this industry has been hit by something or the other. And slowly, when I started in 2004, there was, the hotels that came on board, and like Divya rightly pointed out, Kerala and Rajasthan, they only wanted the inbound traveler. And this, even the big names, they would look at the Indian traveler and this was a constant complaint. But once these things, every 4 years, you're hit with something or the other, which kind of impacts your inbound audience. SARS happened, and before that, the Bombay blast, and something or the other started happening. And then in Kerala, one after the other, they've been having some issue or the other. There has been the Nipah virus, then the floods. So when you're hit by something like that, hotels have started looking at the domestic market. Not completely, but grudgingly, they started looking at the domestic market. My point to all of them, and I've been talking to them from 2011 onwards, that do have a strategy for the domestic market. And some people did. Earlier, what they used to do was summers, they used to keep it closed. And there are a couple of hotels on my list that still keep the summer closed, saying, October to March is the inbound season, and then we start opening up. But a lot of people reduce that down to just 2 months in a year when it is very, very hot to travel, which means September, August and September, they are open, which means they do want the domestic traveler. So that idea has already come in. This pandemic has just accelerated, and people are like scrambling over to, the minute I put a session on that says, what does the domestic traveler want? I have all my hoteliers wanting to listen to what the domestic traveler wants. So in that sense, I mean, a lot of them are geared up to the domestic traveler. And even us as an aggregator of hotels, we market hotels. We market and sell small boutique owner-run experiential hotels with a huge focus on sustainability and on conscious luxury travel. Even within our hotels, we also started to accumulate hotels that do not focus totally on the inbound market, so that there's a varied, offering. I can't go to a domestic travel agent and give him something that his client might not really want, or that a hotelier doesn't want. That said, are the hotels geared up for this? I think they are. They just need to, I think it's more of an attitude, right? Instead of saying, yeah, bahut mushkil market hai, that has to go. At the end of the day, it is an evolving market also. The domestic market is an evolving market. I mean, the high-end traveler, of course, is a world traveler, and he knows what is happening. But this, reluctance to, embrace the domestic, that is the biggest shift that is happening, which I see just now. Among my hotels and outside this also, this reluctance to say, Indian travelers kya karenge, that is slowly, shifting away. So that is the one big thing. And where other things are concerned, yes, of course. I mean, a hotel is, a well-run, good hotel is ready. It's just how you figure your price points, how you want to package the whole thing, what is it that you want to offer. Like Divya and Shilpa said, you put in food experiences, you put in, areas where the entire family can sit together, have a meal, watch a cricket match or something like that. These things contribute to, experiences that the Indian market would want. Or, and I think they are fussy, but I do agree, they're around the world. I mean, I know the South American, they don't like offbeat hotels. I've been trying to get people to come to the South American market, wants to go to large built up hotels. So that is there. So each one has its own travel character. And Indians have a travel character. For many people, they don't know. I started my career with the domestic traveler. And at that point, it's just slightly eclectic group who used to travel to these offbeat places, which is from the television, from media, writers and things slightly. But over a period of time, all kinds of people have started to ask and question. You need to warn them off. And see, the briefing is very essential, which is true for all travelers across the world. You need to brief them properly. Say, okay, you're going to go here, there's no television. Right. So one very small thing where the domestic travelers, and this is slightly like a little personal, but whenever I go into a hotel and see that they have dry toilets, I tell them that they need to put health faucets. It is a welcome note to an Indian traveler, So yeah, I think everybody is making that slight change, shift in attitudes as well. So I think we are ready, we have a large tranche of hotels with great ideas, great value system, lovely experiences and sustainable ideas happening. And we don't have travelers, and they should be looking. Some of them are comparable with some of the best lodges and retreats and palace stays in the world. And Indian hospitality is, I think, way, way better than many, many other countries.
And similarly, we don't have any dearth of nature, open spaces and so on, whatever Divya was mentioning for the traveler that they're seeking for. Hari, let me then turn to you and ask you, what does your sense tell? Will the future traveler still be an explorer? Will she be looking for newer places, newer experiences, trying out new things? What Divya was saying, maybe go towards more nature. Do you see that internal shift being complemented along with the work from home and the other things that you're talking about, remote working?
So I think, so let me focus. That's kind of, I think, where we are getting to as a kind of broader focus. And unique, obviously, in the last 10 odd years that I've done Holiday IQ, we've completely focused on the domestic traveler at a time when the domestic traveler was not, the tourism industry in India didn't think domestic travel existed, forget about anything else, right? So we kind of sensed that and, got talking to the traveler, and we found a whole lot of things. And I think there's been an evolution in that decade odd period that I've looked at it. So let me try and give you a sense of what I saw in the last, let's say, couple of years. The reason I'm saying that is because I think those things will get accentuated and go forward, and it will address the specific question of exploration that you asked. So I think what I saw in the last couple of years, Amit, is that the Indian traveler, and when I use the word Indian traveler, I don't really necessarily limit myself to only the upmarket Indian traveler. At the same time, obviously, I'm not talking about the extremely mass market, which is the market that takes a bus. I don't know how many people are aware, but there is a market. It's a large market of people who take buses from, for example, I was once in Taj Mahal in Agra, and I came across a bunch of travelers from deep south in Tamil Nadu, in villages of Tamil Nadu, who had taken a bus, and there were like 4 buses, and they were going all across India, and they had reached at that point there. And, obviously, and it's very, very interesting actually if you start talking to them and to find out what they're looking for, etc. But that's a slightly different sort of segment from what we are discussing now, so I'm going to leave that aside. Although I would absolutely encourage potential entrepreneurs to look at those markets, because some of those markets in terms of scale and need rival anything else that we talk about in this sort of mid-market or up-end market. So we should look at
and perhaps even easier to reach now with the advent of so many social media.
Yeah, and if you're trying to make a change, trying to make a change, that is the market. I mean, if you want to take an entire country into sustainability, that's the market I would be targeting.
In fact, Shobha, let me add on to that. This conversation has stuck with me, and I'm going to divert a little bit away from the question you asked, Amit, but I think this is an interesting one, and let me just spend a minute on it. This conversation was with an extended family. It's like I was probably speaking to somebody who was a village elder, and he said, in my family there were 12 people traveling in the bus within his family, going to all these places. And he said, I asked him, what's the single biggest challenge? And you know what he said was very interesting. He said the single biggest challenge is the cost of food. And he said that if you go to even the smallest kind of places, near a Taj, and you want to have a basic meal, he said, it will be 100 rupees per person multiplied by 12 people multiplied by 3 meals is the cost that the family would incur in a day. And it just struck me that these are spaces that we've not thought at scale. I don't know why we've not thought at scale, but somewhere I feel that because our industry was initially focused on this little cottage industry called inbound, and then slowly, very grudgingly, as Shobha said, transformed ourselves to looking at the higher end Indian traveler, which incidentally in India is a 50 lakh number, 5 million people in India, who is really what we call the sort of mid to upper end market. So the real size of the market is all somewhere else. And we never deigned to look down, so to speak, on that market. So I think there is a big opportunity, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs should look at that. The more interesting thing, and equally interesting thing, and I want to connect that to the point of exploration, is that you would be surprised that even that audience is actually very keen to explore and sense this country beyond of the obvious. Beyond of the obvious of, saying that, beyond the obvious of, just going and standing in front of the Taj Mahal. I'll take one example and then I'll close it there, is that, in near Varanasi, there's a place called Sarnath. Sarnath is probably the world's most important place for Buddhism, because it's where Buddha, got enlightenment and gave his first sermon. I've been there a bunch of times. There isn't a single thing to do there or experience Buddhism in any form whatsoever, unless you happen to be a Korean, in which case the Koreans have created a small little thing for themselves, unless you happen to be a Japanese who created something for themselves. If you happen to be an Indian, and let me tell you, irrespective of how much income you have, you can get no experience whatsoever. There's a sari shop outside, and I asked him, do you have a single sari with a Buddhist motif in it? And he didn't have. It's just amazing what we have not done. So if I look at the opportunity, I think the opportunity is just, amazing. The customer is really not saying that I don't want experiences. It's just that I don't think we've worked it. So as an industry, I think there's a great opportunity for us to do.
Thanks, Harry. Shilpa, what do you see in this whole emerging new market? What is the role for designers and curators? Because I think somewhere the twain has to meet. There are providers who are ready, the customer is ready to explore. How do you think designers and curators can help customers or properties on the other side to meet each other?
So I think the largest opportunity for experienced curators really is to first begin with having conversations with travelers to understand what it is that they miss, what it is that they're wanting. I mean, the importance of those conversations cannot be undermined. At one level, there is enough and more opportunity. We've talked enough about culinary and the role that culinary experiences have, or cultural heritage experiences have. But there are simple things like today. Everybody is a self-appointed photographer. Everybody wants to be able to talk about their travels on Instagram and Facebook. Everybody wants to be able to write smart posts. So I mean, you could go away to a charming property 5 hours away from where you live, and do a whole 3-day interaction around a concept, let's say, which we called it click share like. Just work through with a writer come photographer, take pictures, learn to compose your pictures nicely, learn to write nice posts, and come back feeling on top of the world about your ability to travel. And these are simple concepts. I mean, you go with a large bunch of no, there's no such thing as large bunch anymore, but you go with, let's say, 3 or 4 people, right? It could be your friends, it could be your family. You could spend the 3 days or 4 days, whatever time you're able to make, just learning how to paint, with an easel mounted on a hill, whether this is Munnar or whether it is Kunur, or even outside of Kochi, you go to Cranganore, which is a charming little property in Chandamangalam. There's nothing that you can't do there. So the point is that for somebody who's willing to think, there is enough and more opportunity to learn, engage with local communities. It's all about finding ways to create some amount of meaning and purpose also from these interactions. There is, weaving or printing or embroidery going on in most communities, in Rajasthan, Gujarat, Kerala, and so on. The opportunity is really there for us to be able to engage, with them. There is a concept around journeys for change, which to my mind is like an idea whose time has come, which is all about going into, let's say, into the hills in Uttarakhand, or going into the hills in Himachal, or anywhere for that matter. I mean, it's a fairly location agnostic concept. But the truth is, you engage with change makers, people who've given up lives in the cities to set up small projects, either around farming and agriculture, or around livelihood opportunities for women in the villages. Big challenges today in rural communities in the mountains really is to stop migration from happening from villages in the hills to the big cities, to stop, to actually minimize their dependence on tourism. Today, Uttarakhand is hugely impacted, not because they don't have clothes to wear or a roof over their head or enough to eat, but about 80% of that economy was dependent on incoming tourists. Now, if they were to start engaging with each other, collaborating with each other, and getting into little cottage industries around artisanal produce, artisanal, whether food product or personal care product, here's an opportunity for a domestic traveler to go engage with them to see, how they live their lives. What is it that I can do to be able to help them a little bit in their journey? A graphic designer might say, okay, I'll stay a week and help you design some labels for your jams. Somebody who's a social media expert might say, okay, you know what? Let me help you create your own post. Let me help you how to take pictures and upload them on social media. So this is really about finding ways to also give back. One big shift in experiences, I think, is from the point of view of the solo traveler. I mean, I've seen a paradigm shift in the approach to travel. We're no longer traveling with families and families alone, right? I mean, many women today have the freedom to travel and explore when they go solo or with their own friends. And now that this whole business of work from home is beginning to happen, then, women travelers in India, for example, have had a significantly higher appetite for offbeat and experimental travel. And now with being allowed to work from wherever they are, I think the opportunity for them to just go off somewhere on a long stay, like for a month or two, and work from another location is tremendous. So whether we call them solo vacations or whether we call them sabbaticals, I mean, I think a sabbatical is an epic milestone in anybody's life. There can't be a better time than now to start pitching options around sabbaticals to a traveler who is willing to, say, okay, my kids will spend 3 months on a sabbatical from school. In any case, shitty Zoom classes are really not going to go anywhere. Let's just go away and let there be education through travel. So, I mean, to my mind, I think it's a huge opportunity to be able to pitch sabbaticals. Of course, we would pitch them differently to the solo traveler from, somebody who's traveling with a partner would want a different kind of a sabbatical. Somebody who's wanting to go away with young kids will want it differently. But these things are, all waiting to be customized. But the opportunity very much exists.
So no, that sounds interesting, but then we are still talking about the customer is willing to travel. Maybe not immediately, but sometime in the near future. I think there is still this fear, right? There is a fear, and by the way, all parts of this experience starts from the customer, starts from the service provider, the employees of the service provider, because they're going to get in touch with the customers coming from everywhere. And then maybe I can open it up to anybody who would like to take this question. That what are the signals that can make consumers feel a little more safe or confident of what is happening, right? So, does it include some kind of a certification or an end-to-end intra-city transportation, which is more secure for them, so that both the service providers, employees, and the customers feel a little more secured by moving into a location which they don't know how the outbreak has affected there or where all the people over there are being exposed to. And then, by the way, this might still be a concern post-COVID, right? So, because people have become a little more conscious about, infections in general. So do you think there is a need to also address this nagging thought in the minds of the consumer by doing something extra? Divya, maybe you can take this or Shilpa, whoever.
Sure. I think, definitely you're right. More needs to be done. One of the big things that I think, Deep Kalra, who's the founder of Make My Trip, has spoken about and is lobbying for extensively is the idea of two-way testing. So that you test someone before they get on a plane and you test them when they arrive. Now, if you can actually make it mandatory for everybody to test before they get to the airport, 2 days before they're actually meant to take a flight, you will immediately put many, many people at ease because they know now that the vast majority of people that they're going to be encountering does not have the disease. The odds of them having gotten it in the last 2 days is significantly lower, of course. So that will help tremendously. The second thing that will help hugely is once all of the states in this country agree on a uniform policy when it comes to quarantine, when it comes to what the rules are for transportation in and out, because at the moment, every state is basically functioning for itself. And the rules are completely different and they change from one day to the next. Now, I understand that at this point in time, obviously, health and safety is taking precedence over, jump-starting travel, and that's understandable. But there has to be an intention from the government at the center that this is going to be something that becomes a uniform policy across the entire nation. Because at the moment, a lot of people who want to travel, and like I said, the need to travel is huge. But I'm not sure that I want to do it because by the time I get, for example, even to Goa, I don't know what the rules are going to be when I get there. The messages are mixed. There's no clear communication. And I think that's what's really important. That is what's going to make the difference and put people more at ease. So one is to have a uniform policy. Two is do what you can in terms of testing to make it mandatory for people to test before they actually get on a plane. And the third thing I would say is that all of this communication has to be extremely clear and consistent in order for people to actually believe it and then feel confident enough to make plans.
To travel, yes. And what about Shobha? Are there any specific steps that the hotels are taking to do that? I'll come to you, Shilpa, after that.
Okay.
So hotels are doing a great job. I mean, especially the boutique hotels and those that believe in sustainability, which most of the rare hotels are. The underlying thought is that for something that is whose best preventive is soap and water, we are not going to bomb our bomb our place with harsh chemicals. So there's a huge shift towards looking at benign alternatives, and there's all these one-use things, but very sensible, sane protocols that they have derived from, say, Singapore Clean or the WHO. That is one thing. The other thing is, one of the things, the rare hotels are opening up. We're posting, somebody's coming. One of the things that I have noticed is it is the repeat customers who are going back to the hotels that they have felt safer in. So whenever I call and say, I have 6 room booked, this is a client who came last year. So in general, you're seeing, so you see, trust is the currency just now, right? If people want to go to a place that they trust. So the other thing with owner-run hotels is it's better to say I'm going to Shilpa's hotel than to say, I'm going to an XYZ hotel. So that trust factor is there. Our hotels are mapping green areas around them. It is also very important to make sure that, we are not looking at huge price variations. We're saying, okay, a lot of discounts, you take this, take that. And we are not waiving off any of the mandatory tests that the state government is recommending. Most of our hoteliers feel that if you ask somebody, if a guest asks me that, should I be doing this? And you say, it doesn't matter, yahan aake dekh lenge. The trust factor is immediately lost. So they stick to their guns, and they do want to ensure that they come with all the, whatever testing is required in that place, especially for driving, driving vacations, whatever mandatory norms are required, they are followed. The other thing about the small hotels, you must remember, and this is one of my favorite things to say, just like any other, like a allergy or a food preference, or any bed preference, or anything that has to do with for the luxury traveler, the fact is that you can reach out to a hotel and say, listen, I'm sure you've done all of these, but I want to make sure of this one particular thing. It's not a standard protocol. You can pick up that phone, talk to your tour operator, and also talk to your agent. In this sense, I just want to tell you, before the tour operator, or the travel consultant, and the tour curator, I think he will be back. I mean, this is his moment. And I think health and safety experiences, all these things that we are talking about really plays out very well. One other thing about small boutique hotels is that in most of the rare hotels, or most of these personally owned properties or wildlife lodges and things like that, the land to key ratios are very large. I mean, you're probably sitting in 40 acres and have 12 cottages and things like that. So that actually, some of them have very normally and very logically, they fell into place with this COVID protocols, So I think there is a lot of this will be taken care of. And this is my advice to anybody running lodges, please, or hotels. Please don't look at cutting down prices, because then it's a race to the bottom.
Yes, Shilpa, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I mean, Shobha's partly made the point that I was wanting to make, this whole business of trust. 80% of our domestic travelers, for example, are people who come back to us over and over again. Every time they want to take a vacation, they come back and say, okay, where should we go now? So conversations with people you trust, whether it's your tour operator, or whether it is your property that you as a family have been visiting, many times over in the last many years. You don't shy away from picking the phone on them and saying, listen, in this time, what do you think, you're doing differently? And what is it that I must worry about if I, intend to bring my family over? So trust is a huge thing. Once you've been able to get that trust reinforced, either by the, boutique property owner, or by your, travel partner, travel, operator, you get the reassurance that you want. And Shobha's right. I mean, you can't really win trust on cost leadership. You're not going to be able to start giving people deep discounts, because the truth is that most of these people are probably only going to work with 50% occupancies, depending on, the profile of their spaces, whether they're individual cottages or whether, it's one large house with 6 rooms, in which case they'll only let out 3 rooms to one family. So their costs are actually going to remain the same, and their occupancy is going to be significantly lower. So they're faced with a scenario where the economics has actually just gone 2x. There's no question of discounts, and anybody who's pitching discounts is actually then going to start cutting corners on quality and tests and security and safety measures, hygiene standards. So
it's an interesting tension. I can see that there is going to be new economics, a new segment, new requirements. At the same time, one will have to be wary about what are the demands that the new segment of the customer is going to look for. Right? So let me take a few questions. If Anaka can come online and ask some of the questions that she has collected from the audience, then we can take those first, and then maybe if still time permits, we can have a few more discussion points here. Over to you, Anaka.
Okay, thanks, Amit. The first question I have is for Divya. What makes travel so special is that you can leave your city behind, all the associations that you have with it, your regular routine, go explore a completely different environment. And there can never be a total replacement for that. Having said that, we have a question here. Do you think virtual travel can be a trade-off to physical travel? And do you have any thoughts on how technology can be used or developed on that front?
Sorry, yes. Certainly, I think that technology is being used at the moment in very innovative ways, and it must. Can it completely substitute for being there in person? No, absolutely not. Travel is a multi-sensory experience, and I think all of us on this panel would agree with that. So I don't think that it can replicate that experience at all. However, I do think that for the time being and for right now, we have been doing what we sort of call keeping the dream alive. And one of the amazing ways that you can do that is via technology, right? So if you see the really innovative ways that travel companies, travel agencies, hotels, destinations have been using technology during this period, has been extremely smart, because they're using it to generate demand that is going to finally see light of day when the situation allows. So I think it's really important to use technology right now in the best possible way to prepare yourself for the longer term. Obviously, the hotels themselves are doing a lot on the back end. So they're going to be doing a lot more technology and to make sure that things are fewer contact points. For example, your payment systems need to change, your check-in is going to change. You may not have someone coming in to escort you to your door anymore. You're probably just going to have a key. Hopefully, you don't even really need to swipe it. So definitely on that end as well, technology is extremely important. But what I find really interesting is the innovative ways that I've seen extremely traditional hotels and companies use tech during these last few months. I've been on so many virtual safaris through Africa during this time. I think it's incredible. They're live, and you're sort of watching, you're watching a lion, and you're watching a leopard, and you're watching all of this in real time as and when, these guys are actually seeing it, and they're narrating it to you. And it's incredibly engaging. It doesn't make up for being there. It's never going to make up for being there. But I think what it's really doing right now is helping people tap into what it is that they love about travel. It's keeping that alive. And I think it's keeping us from going slightly insane as well, because you're able to travel in your mind a little bit. And that's extremely important, I think, for mental health. I think that at the moment, a lot of these very immersive experiences, the ability to talk to people across the globe. I mean, if you think about the last time there was a pandemic, people had no way of speaking to each other. And that's completely changed. The fact that we're able to have this kind of conversation is incredible. And it keeps the travel community really strong. And I think that that's going to have great results going forward. The fact that we've been able to do all of these things during this time. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question. No, it's not going to make up for it, but I'm really glad that it's around and that people are using it and harnessing it as much as they can. I think there will be a lot of disruption in the tech space going forward. And we're seeing that already in terms of what the industry is doing. So I think it's going to look very different when we come back.
My next question is for Shilpa. Considering the opt for local concept trending under the pandemic outbreak, do you foresee its impact in the travel and hospitality industry? Do you think it's going to be a game changer for the Indian economy boost?
Opt for local is certainly full of possibilities, because wherever it is that you choose to look, there is an experience waiting to present itself. And when we say game changer, I mean, the truth is that participating in half-day workshops or half-day culinary experiences and walks really isn't stacking up in terms of what it's going to cost or the potential to earn for some of these service providers. But the truth is that it's a beginning, and it whets people's appetites. I mean, I always feel that a half-day, one-day experience actually whets the traveler's appetite to actually sign up for a more immersive, much longer experience. You get into this whole conversation around vegan desserts in, let's say, Mumbai, for example. If you're signing up for a 3-day workshop, the next thing you want to do is to go off with this home chef into the forest to forage for ingredients and for little plants and vegetables and so on and so forth, that you can rustle up a good meal. I mean, there's a whole concept around fine wine, fabulous foods, which is all about going away, not too far away from wherever you are, right? With a sommelier or a mixologist and a home chef, and the two of them, work their magic together. Now, these are all local, experts. These are people who've, chosen to be in a certain space, and are just, able to add so much, to bring so much, value to your experience of the meal, just by taking it out of home and out of your, classic cafe and restaurant space. So yeah, I mean, local has so much to offer. I mean, I think there is no dearth of possibilities when we look around. I mean, I, for one, have chosen to really, wear proud to be in India label, in every which way. So yeah, there's so much of India waiting to be discovered.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Anaka, what happens with these local experiences is it highlights dying textiles, vanishing arts, crafts, and folklore, which over a period of time, when like for instance, fur painting in Bhilwara, where we have a property called Shahpura Bagh, it became contemporary because they started using those design into, so everybody knows about fur artists just now. So it kind of keeps the art alive. So that will be the natural progression for local experiences. And yeah, of course, over a period of time, it can be a game changer. We actually promote it as a very, very strong point where hotels are concerned.
I also want to say one thing. I mean, this whole business of little gifts that you buy on your way out, right? I mean, when you're traveling a game park, or when you're at Shahpura Bagh, you want to be able to take a little piece of where you were back with you. So I think the opportunity also with local artisans to create little memorabilia, right, of the state, of the craft form, of where you've been, whether it's Ranthambore or whether it's Kanha, or whether it is Munnar. There's enough and more that the local community can actually create for people to take a little piece back home, for them to build memories on.
Thanks. Maybe in retrospect, game changer needn't necessarily have been such a big focus, but it's still important, is what I'm understanding. A question that I want to throw out to all the panelists: what are some of the best post-COVID innovations in the tourist and hospitality sector, which you've already seen, or which you think might help them bounce back into the game? Or if not bounce, glide back, ease back in.
Bounce back scares me. So I'll go first on this. I think one of the biggest things that's happened to the travel industry is understanding that people can work remotely and work well. Smaller teams working from home and better finance management. One of the things that struck me the minute COVID hit is that how quickly companies wanted to send off their people on unpaid leave or to sack them. It was a very scary thing for me. And I think this is somewhere people will be thinking about the number of people they hire and how they want to manage their finances.
Hari, you want to go next?
I think we're all pretty much shell-shocked. So I don't think in my this thing, I think we've seen something already implemented. I think that would be asking a bit too much from the industry. The industry is just about struggling to get its head around the fairly large problem that it's got on its hands. So I don't think we've got something that we can see. But I want to pick up an area that has possibilities of innovation, which is related to an earlier point, Amit, that you mentioned, which is the fear, the issue of fear. And I think I just want to highlight a possibility, which I want to leave it here because I think all of the potential and the existing entrepreneurs that are out there can possibly think about this and see what they want to look at or do in relation to this. And this is a customer point. See, I think there is a very interesting paradox that this whole COVID experience has brought to the customer. And I think in the paradox, there is a big opportunity if we know how to tap that opportunity. I don't know at this point, but I think it is something we can think about. The paradox is this. The whole problem of genesis of COVID is the fact of human interaction. If you're too close to people, the chances are that you will get infected. The solution to that the world has figured out for whatever reason is a solution that we did 700 years ago. When the Black Plague was there, which is basically saying that we will isolate people from each other, which is really saying that, we will reduce human contact. The implication of that is that the need that people feel for human contact has not gone down. If at all, this lockdown has actually massively increased it. What it has done is it has created a paradox in everybody's mind or a conflict in everybody's mind saying that I want that, but at the same time, I'm not sure about it. I have a lack of trust and, those kind of things. So I think there is an opportunity here and ultimately it is the hospitality industry and the tourism industry, which stands for the idea of human connections. And I think there's a big opportunity if we can find out that model that enables people to have that human connection without the residual fear that the human connection will result in something. And I think it might, and if we leave it for the governments to get their act together and stuff like that, I suspect it will never happen. It will never happen in the sense that I don't think travel or improving travel will be a priority for them to make that happen. So I think we will have as an industry have to figure out what is possible. One of the areas we could possibly think about is more tighter kind of community concepts, saying that, here are a bunch of people from, I'm just top of my head, one particular apartment complex in Gurgaon, who have got all kinds of protocols anyway running. And therefore, they have something that we deliver in hospitality terms outside. And those people can have a higher degree of, human connection when they come to us. It's a very base level proposition, but I'm saying the larger idea is what we need to think about. So I just want to leave it there as something that we could possibly think about.
Yes, Shilpa.
I have one very small point to make. I don't know if it's a COVID innovation, but the truth is that the role of Wi-Fi in all these far-flung places, whether it's homestays or boutique hotels, in the hills, in the forest, is just going to the expectation from Wi-Fi connectivity. The kind of Wi-Fi connectivity you can have is going to change. So I think all the service providers have to kind of brace up. I think the hotels should become mindful of the fact that if they're going to be able to provide very strong Wi-Fi connectivity, then that might strengthen their case for long stay sabbaticals and work from wherever you are, vacations and so on. So I mean, that's something that earlier on nobody really cared, right? That you had no connectivity is actually an advantage because everybody's trying to break away from the packed city life. But now if you're carrying your work with you and you want an excuse to find a place you can go stay at for a month, Wi-Fi connectivity is suddenly very important. So yeah, that's
Wi-Fi or a 5G, one of those.
I think the other thing that's also just really important in terms of innovation is that I think everything new that's going to come up really has to be delivering information in real time. Anything that is COVID related. So you have to be able to really get that kind of data, that kind of information to the consumer real time so that they're able to make decisions. So flexibility is going to become extremely important. And I think that technology can play a big role in that because you're going to have to learn how to hedge on the back end if you're going to be that flexible. You'll have a day when a case, unfortunately, for the future, you'll have a case pop up in one part of the world where you are going to have people come in from, and suddenly that's going to be cancelled, and you're going to have remaining inventory which you need to get rid of right away. Who can you target at that point in time? Will actually be allowed in? Who is that exact sect of people, and how can you target them in real time and make sure that you're actually getting all of the rooms that you have available out to them? So I think real-time information and the flexibility on the back end is going to be extremely important when it comes to tech.
Thank you. I will hand it back to Amit to ask any last questions or closing.
Thank you, Anita. So maybe I don't want to have any questions, but maybe if I could have each one of you share maybe, let's say, one tip or one kind of a suggestion for an aspiring entrepreneur in this field. What would that be in the post-lockdown, post-COVID world? That from your perspective, and it could be at any part of this travel and hospitality sector where you believe that people should look at this opportunity very, very carefully and maybe go for it, especially for the young entrepreneurs listening in today.
Let me take this question first, Amit. I think my first submission to anybody who's wanting to, make a go of this sector, this space, is really that you have to stand for something which is very, very distinctive and unique. You can't be entering an already crowded elevator and trying to, make elbow room for yourself, because that really, in this time more than ever before, that really isn't going to help. That's one. So, fine tune your value proposition as much as possible. Stand for something very, very unique, regardless of how niche it is. Because the answer to, niche is not bad. Not being able to scale is not a bad idea. But the truth is that if you can stand for something different, you have a heads up. The other thing really is that, collaborate. I think it's very important for all niche players to have a very, very collaborative mindset. I think collaborations don't come easily to the big players. They believe they can do it all themselves. And in the travel industry, even more so. But the truth is that, not everybody is good at everything. So you've got to be able to enlist the support of others who've become experts in, let's say, wildlife tourism, or in outdoorsy adventure tourism, or in, managing destinations like a Hampi, for example. You've got to work with the best there is. And therefore, a collaborative mindset is very, very important. I'll stop there.
Be exceptional and collaborate.
Yeah.
Yes. Thanks.
Yes, some of the opportunities which not many people are exploring, especially where the domestic travel, and I always believe that this would be a great way to go forward. It has happened in places like the US, and is something like creating like a club, right? Where travel is one of the offerings. So when Shilpa is talking about a collaboration, you actually bring a group of people together, so they dip into, the knowledge bases that you have created, and again. So one of the innovations, I think, going forward where travel is concerned, is to create concierges and club like, companies. The other thing, of course, my favorite is that this conversation is everywhere. Don't lose out on this, because sustainability is a reality, climate change is a reality, and this is just not about plastic. There's a range of things that you kind of prep up where sustainability is concerned. And if you begin today, an operation, a program design, and a marketing and a promotional output that focuses on sustainability and looks at tourism from the perspective of a benefit to the community and benefit to the destination, trying to create, keep the pristine idea and the pristine state of the destination becomes very important, and it is future ready. I mean, you can go for a very, very long time on this. And when you start looking at sustainability, you also will work towards, and some of the hotels that really worked in this COVID times are the ones who said, we have money. I have, we have Tiger Mountain Pokhara Lodge, who's seen civil wars, who's seen, earthquakes. He says, I'm okay for 2 years because I have built myself up like that. That's the whole idea of sustainability, that you, at the first sight of trouble, you just don't kind of shoo people away. So I think you should focus on a very, very sustainable idea for your businesses.
Do you think, Shobha, there will be a new market for camper vans coming up in India? People.
I'm not a big fan of
Yeah.
camper vans. See, the thing with India is safety is still an issue. Road rage still is an issue. Yeah, road rage is still an issue. And there was a little, about 10 years, I think 7 years ago, somebody did a pilot project and I was not very convinced. So
Actually, that came to my mind because you said that the properties have a large green space. Instead of having more keys, why not have some spaces
have
for
spaces.
people
Yeah,
to come there?
to bring there. No, it's the driving. I mean, the camper vans, driving through roads and things like that. So that is what I worry about. Yeah.
I have to say, though, there are some new initiatives which are focused on areas which are terrains which are relatively safer, quieter. And well, for people who may not want to travel with young children or with older parents, for youngsters, it's a great way to be. I mean, I think the millennial Generation Z audience would be very, very happy just, going into a caravan off on a trip to Meghalaya or some such thing. It's an experiment worth doing.
Yes, sure. With a big kitchen in it, right? So.
Well, yeah. No, what I would like to see is more campsites, not caravan driven, but just campsites. So
Yeah,
I have 80 acres and I create campsites, just like you see in the US. So,
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, Divya.
Are we going back to a tip that we're giving everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
I guess if there's one tip I would give to anyone who's interested in the industry, I think that, because it's the travel industry, don't think that you have to do something in some far-flung place. Think local, act local. Where you are right now is the travel destination for somebody else. And the best thing that you can do is to work with what you know best. So explore what's in your own backyard, in your own neighborhood. You know what is most interesting about your community. You know the food practices, the traditions, the culture, the customs, the attractions in that place. You know what you can make and design beautiful experiences out of. So start there. Really think about the travel experience where you are. And try and source as much as you can locally. Really, the importance of sustainability just cannot be overemphasized. Shobha's already talked about it, so I don't need to repeat it, but that is absolutely the need of the hour. And that is what is going to make people appreciate you, find you, return to you, and talk about you. So I think if you can manage to keep the local and the sustainable and the unique at the heart of whatever it is that you're doing in the space, whether it's travel or somehow related to travel, I think that really is where the future lies. So definitely be a part of the industry, but please start thinking and acting local wherever you are.
Thank you, Divya. Hari, over to you.
So quick one. If you step back from what we are discussing now, what we are discussing is actually no different from what we discuss every 4 years that Shobha mentioned, which is really saying that something happens and demand goes off. And that's pretty much it, right? Because, travel is not such a high priority or a critical item in people's lives that, that we are able to the first sign of trouble, demand falls off, right? So I think the only way we have the ability to sustain demand is to create a compelling product and to know what the product is. And the product in travel is always a story, is always a dream. There is no product beyond that. In terms of, we might talk about the physicals of the inside of a room and the walk that we will have somewhere else, but all of that is in relation to tying together a story that I dreamt of before I traveled. So demand, the absolutely only sort of vaccination for the possible fall of a demand is to have a compelling story. And I'm saying, and I think Indian travel industry still hasn't cracked that problem of compelling storytelling as much as it could, given what we have, right? And it's not just, it's the hoteliers, it's the experience providers, but it's equally the tour operators, the travel curators. Everybody has a story to tell. Everybody has a story of where they come from, why they are in it. I talk to individuals and I'm really interested, and I keep talking to all kinds of people, and they all seem to have fascinating stories of why they are at that moment doing what they're doing. We don't talk about that. We don't build that. So I think if an entrepreneur can or a bunch of entrepreneurs can start helping the Indian travel industry figure out its story voice, so to speak. There could be a big play there. And I think that's the only real solution to the problem of occasional, demand falling off the cliff. And I think that's a big opportunity. So everybody needs to get their storytelling act together.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. And I think with if I put all of these together, I think there is a lot more for the Indian entrepreneurs in this sector to explore and benefit from. And frankly, it has been in the last 1.5 hours, I was expecting a lot more a gloomy picture of this sector, but it has been so refreshing to hear these innovations and forward-looking initiatives that probably either providers in this sector have already started or you have already pointed out towards this. I'm sure this is going to be very, very helpful for people in the sector to, bounce back, what Anaka said, or at least start thinking about how the next year is going to be. The next season, maybe not, but the season after that, I heard October 2021, which is the not so very distant future as it looks like in the travel industry, at least right now. So thank you very much to all the panelists for spending time with us this afternoon. You've given us a lot of food for thought for the coming days to think about what we can make best out of this. With this, I would like to hand over to my colleague Gitanjali to close the session for all of us. Over to Gitanjali.
Thank you, Professor Karna. Just to repeat what I just heard Hari say, the product is really a dream and a story. And that is so true. And I think all of us are packing our bags, if not physically, in our minds to step out and travel again. Thank you, Professor Karna, for steering and contributing to a very optimistic and insightful deliberation. Thank you, Divya, Shilpa, Shobha, and Hari for your time and sharing with us your reflections. Your individual perspectives, opinions, thoughts, ideas, in my opinion, have sent out a very strong message on the future of travel and hospitality industry in India. For me, the biggest takeaway is really a reinstated confidence in our belief that it is really a golden era for India to reimagine how they can re-inspire the local traveler. We would love for all of you to continue your engagement with CCBP, with IIM, whether it is in the form of mentorships, sessions, or just conversations with our community of creative entrepreneurs. And before I end, I just would like to take the opportunity to inform you of our next upcoming deliberation in this series. It's going to be an exploration on the food and beverages industry. It is going to be moderated by our co-chair, Anshul Jain. It will be held on August 28th. And we are excited to actually announce the panelists already. So we will have with us Rashina Munsho Gildial of the Godrej Foods Trends Report. We will have also Matt Chitranjan, who is the co-founder of Blue Tukai, Giri Giridhar, CFO of Taj Group of Hotels, and lastly, and not the least, Ashmeet Kapoor, founder of I Say Organic. You can find more details of this upcoming deliberation on our social handles, and it is sure going to be a very exciting discussion. So, well, until we meet again, thank you so much for all your time and hope to see all of you all again very soon.
Thank you to all the panelists for joining in today. And thank you to all of you who listened in. Have a nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I?